Hello and welcome to Beyond Top 10 Tennis. My name is Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge and I'm your host. I am the proud author of 11 books. I'm a CEO of 12 years. I'm the founder of a startup that was behind data privacy, bringing together the likes of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and Instagram all under one roof, looking at giving users control of their data. I am an elite performance coach, having traveled the world working with elite athletes of varying levels. But most significantly is that I am also the scientist/researcher behind how to specifically develop a top 10 ranking, which essentially means the work is also behind injury management to optimal performance parameters, though really, if you're listening to Beyond Top 10 Tennis, there's a good chance you have an inkling or an interest in tennis. And what we're saying is that I'm also behind the landmark global findings of how specifically to develop a top 10 player. And we actually have the data that backs it up, which is incredibly exciting. I'm also behind such theories as the optimal performance theory, rule of transference, to having coined such terms as the barrier breaker, golden rule to 7 cubed, and so on and so forth, that we will eventually dive into. But today's podcast, it's episode 4 that we're up to, and so if you've been listening along, thank you so much. We will get better, I promise, but hopefully with me you're having a bit of fun along the way, which I guess what this is also about. The premise of these episodes though is to dive deeper into one of the books, and specifically we are focusing on The Secrets to Optimal Performance Success, a comprehensive discussion on developing elite coaches and players as our central focus at this stage. And we're really pulling out sections of the book and diving deeper and sharing additional insights in there. And ones, I guess, when the book was written, weren't really able to be packed into something that has been designed to, I guess, slip in your back pocket, so to speak, that you can really carry it with you to have these lessons that transfer in your playing, if you are the athlete, or coaching for the coaches or for the parents to build those relationships with the coach and in your child or player to really get them towards, I guess, their end objective, their end goal, becoming, whether that's a professional tennis player, getting really good at the sport, or just seeing, I guess, where that sport takes them. All right, today's episode is something that's really close to my heart. It is on 1.4, depression and anxiety in sport, invisibility and how coaches can help. And if you'd like to follow along, we're on page 44. And I will read certain sections out of this chapter and dive a little deeper into, I guess, the applicability and the nature of them and how we can better manage them as we move forward and progress. Though it's probably most important is that I have quite a significant interest in this space, being the chairperson of the board of a not-for-profit mental health organisation, just trying to play my part in, making the world a better place, but also acknowledging, I guess, the stigma around mental health that has been apparent for an incredibly long time, but really bringing it front and centre to share that mental health, despite, I guess, the bad rap that it has, it's really coming in, and it has progressed forwards in a really healthy way to share that whether you experience something directly yourself or not, the odds are that a significant number of people out there do. And I can personally put my hand up and say, regardless of my background and what I've accomplished, that I've definitely experienced different facets of mental health over the years, and that it has been a learning process for me personally also to put that front and center. Just like looking after our physical health and our performance, it's also integral to look at our mental and emotional well-being. I think they're both interchangeable, and if we can acknowledge them but also look after them, it makes us a better, athlete as a whole. And when I say that, I think it's integral to acknowledge the different facets that contribute to an elite athlete, which also transitions over to you as a human. And so I really like taking that humanized approach to say, just because you're a tennis player, it doesn't mean that you are not a person, that you're not a human. And I know that almost sounds absurd to share, though sometimes athletes are differentiated to say that, no, we're different, we are not like that. Though it couldn't be more far from the truth, is that irregardless if you choose to play a sport and get really good at it and you are that athlete edging towards an elite athlete, or if you are that elite athlete ranked around or inside the top 20 looking to just push inside the top 10, regardless at what stage you are at, there is a very high chance that you are needing to, or you currently are, looking after your mental health. And if you're able to put your hand up with me, it essentially means that you are very mindful and conscious of your health and well-being, and it really is, a new model to define what it means to be human. And think that's what it's all about. And maybe there are some of you out there that are like me that really had to change their thinking to really understand the dynamic there and how it, interplayed with everyday life to that transition to becoming that athlete. It's very easy to identify that the struggles between the person and the cross-section to becoming an athlete, though to be able to acknowledge that it's widespread and that the odds of someone having experienced something with their mental health is incredibly high. And I think I'm sharing this because, yes, the data's out there, the statistics are out there that share that. I think at this stage it is, and don't quote me, but please let me know if it's other. I think it's 1 in 2 people now worldwide either experience something with their mental health or know someone very close to them that is dealing with that. And I think it's incredibly important to share that because there is a common misconception out there that there is that stigma because it's like, no, I don't. And, you tuck it under the chair and think that it doesn't exist. And this is really about acknowledging it exists, but it's also a part of being human. And I know this is a little bit of a tangent from tennis, but it's really not, because athletes as a whole, and especially in tennis, have been increasingly more vocal about their mental health, which has been, I think, incredible for athletes and coaches and parents out there to go, hey, these elite athletes actually are putting their hands up to say, you know what, I want to put my mental health front and center. And without naming names, there are a couple of former or current Grand Slam champions that have just put their hand up and saying, I'm going to take a bit of time off. And kudos to them. It is an exceptional, and when we look at role models, that's what it's all about. And for the players, irrespective of what age you're at or what stage you're at in your developmental cycle, coaches and parents, to be mindful of this is a strength. I would go as far as arguing that not being mindful of this and ignoring this or pushing it to the side, tucking it under the chair, is doing a disservice to the athlete or your child as a whole. And not acknowledging it and not putting in proactive steps now is essentially setting up that person, the child, the human, the athlete, for near failure as they grow older. And when I say failure, I mean not having the tools to deal with that. And a lot of the older generations, to, I guess, even my generation, is that the tools were not there. We are actually proactively learning those tools as adults to integrate into our daily lives on how best to cope. Whereas if these tools were learned through our developmental to adolescence to early adulthood years, we would be better off equipped. And of course, this is a very big generalization, because we also know that younger populations are also not being given the tools, and that is why we have the statistics out there with increasingly higher numbers of the depression and anxiety and other mental health, let's say, challenges out there. So we can try to destigmatize, I guess, the rhetoric around that. And that it's integral to build those tools and to be conscious of those tools, irrespective of what age you're at. Okay, so let's get started. That was a bit longer than intended, but it's just such a significant topic, one that I'm very passionate about and spend a good chunk of my time, I guess, committed towards making a positive difference. And this is a very healthy way to integrate the two. Okay, here we go. The word mental health comes with quite a lot of connotations. Yet the word invisible isn't necessarily commonplace with mental illness. In an attempt to shed light on this invisibleness, it is beneficial for coaches to become aware of the fact that this is a cause present amongst developmental juniors, and that it is possible to help by recognizing the signs in an attempt to be a more insightful coach for your players or athletes. Now, it's a big one. And I say this because of, again, the misconceptions around that. Obviously, if you're walking down the street, you can't essentially go, oh, this person has a mental health issue, or this person has a current challenge, or this person has anxiety, or this person has depression, because no one has a red flag or a multicolored flag above their head that says, I'm suffering this. Oh no, I'm struggling to deal with this at this stage. Or no, it's not about that. It's really about being able to change your way of thinking, to say each human, each individual you bump into on a day-to-day basis is dealing with something. And they're probably dealing with something you don't know about, or you've got no idea what it is. And that's okay. That is completely okay. Though it comes down to opening our minds to understand that, they could be dealing with something. The odds that they're dealing with something is very high. How can I be more understanding of that? And that the invisibleness is there. It's not like it's, they're wearing it on their sleeve and you can see. Now, when it comes from the coaching parent perspective, it's just being conscious and aware that things happen. And especially working with developmental athletes and going through adolescence, we also know that it's an incredibly significant stage of development where that mental health, stigma or stigmatized, it's there, but also that they're probably dealing with something they don't know how to deal with, or they're yet to develop the tools. But then we also look at the other end of the spectrum, as in the players who could be inside, the top 100, top 50, top 20. And if you're listening, I hear you and I see you. You are not alone, because the pressure is there. In the world of sport, the pressure is a constant. Now, it's being also able to recognize coaching athletes at this level, they are dealing with something either directly or indirectly that is affecting their general mental health. And that is normal, and it's integral to begin to normalize that. And it's fundamental, again, to be given the tools on how to best cope and manage with that pressure, or with that mental health in general, and how to better equip your own mental health to be in a healthy space that is manageable, that lifts that pressure. Whether players are consciously aware or not, many developmental players go through and experience a variety of emotions that are a direct reflection of their sporting performances. And this is a very important line there, because from a young age and all throughout the sporting spectrum, it is incredibly common for the results to affect an individual's mental health. And it's not just in tennis, it's also in life, but I'll stick to tennis here, and I'm sure we can all acknowledge and see the crossover there. Though if you just lost, 6-1, 6-2, you're probably going to be feeling a bit upset about that performance. Hopefully you can walk away and look at what you learned, how you played, what you can do better next time, what you need to bring back to the training, the court, tools, etc., to be better. And next time you play that person, so on and so forth. But there's also a spiral attached to that can really cause an athlete to just go into a darker place, thinking that it's so heartbreaking. And a lot of athletes, they do wear their hearts on their sleeve, and it's almost normalized in this respect. Though this is where the coach and the parent comes in to be able to lift the player and or athlete out of this dark space, because they're in a vulnerable space when this happens. Because again, their heart's almost broken because of the result, and it's the stigma in respect to attaching your heart to the results and thinking that is your new identity, which is not the case. We know that. Though try telling a 13-year-old that. Try telling a 21-year-old that has been working their whole life up until that point to disassociate. It's incredibly challenging. And if you have not been there, it's even more challenging to try to understand. But that's the best that we can do, is to try to understand and then work with that player and or athlete on the next steps forward. It's not about judgment or telling them, no, that's not the case, or telling, well, you should be stronger or you're not strong enough. We've probably all heard that. I mean, I've personally heard that, and it is heartbreaking / demoralizing as well, because it's really not about that. It's about lifting that athlete or player up, but as the parent and or coach, having the tools to lend a shoulder and let them know that it's not the end of the world. Okay. In order to deal with this, traditionally speaking, a coach more often than not will sit down with his or her player or athlete post-performance and go over what the player did right, what worked for them, and what they need to work on in future training sessions, and how it can then be applied for future competitive performances. This is pretty straightforward, and any good coach should be aware of this feedback stream. If it is not the feedback stream, then you know right now this is a definitive aspect of your coaching practices that you need to develop and incorporate into your coaching pedagogy. Now, that's a big one. And just to touch on coaching pedagogy in respect to your focal point, your underlying values, etc. But if you're not the coach that's sitting down with your player athlete after these instances, and it really should be after the win or after the loss, like irrespective, so there's a healthy pattern created and also an association with the end goal or the performance, not associated with the win only or not associated with the loss only. So if you can establish a pattern that irrespective of your result, there is still a healthy evaluation and conversation of the performance, that is the starting point you want to aim for. And that also is interchangeable with life, whether it is school, university, or your professional career. We all have our wins and our losses, things that go really well and things that really don't. And it's about having that healthy pattern that irrespective of the outcome, you still have that feedback system that's a constant. So again, we're building a healthy association rather than the disassociation there. When it comes to the emotional state of a player, and when it is clearly not related to their performance, this is an area that coaches need to look out for in order to help their player and or athlete on more than a superficial level. This is really important. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I have a high performance background, which essentially means that I've worked with athletes in one way, shape or form for the last 20 years. And prior to that was one. I mean, currently, sometimes, let's say, but that's another topic for another day. And over those years, I can't tell you how many players I've had that have been vulnerable in respect to just not knowing how to cope with certain situations off the tennis court. And this is very normal. And it's incredibly normal for this demographic, age bracket, etc. And we're talking about a wide age bracket here, right? From adolescence all the way up to early 20s, when we're in this, peak phase. And it's about being able to guide them, being able to listen, but also acknowledging that not all problems are on the court. There are a lot of life problems that can hit any person at any given time, and if they don't have the tools to deal with them, then they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what to do, and that is completely okay. It is completely normal, and it's about coming in from an outsider's perspective as that coach, as that confidant, and being able to just lend an ear and maybe some insights, and then refer and or talk to the parents and to see what type of bridge can be built to help the player and or athlete at this given point in time. And that is where that really healthy coach-athlete relationship comes in. And touching on that is just having that really good rapport, but also the coach-parent relationship, being able to call the parent up or speak with them ideally in person and to share what's going on, what you've heard, and coming up with a really good solution. And it really could be about maybe the player or athlete needs a bit of time off. Maybe they need to refocus. There are many different tools out there and options that are going to work best for the individual. And that is fundamental, is that every athlete or player, they're an individual. They're not to be treated exactly the same. No, we don't do that. So it's about, again, humanizing the approach, being understanding and listening, just as you would do off the tennis court or off, I guess, the sporting field or in the pool. Irrespective of where you are, it's about being able to treat the person in front of you as the human, as you would want to be treated yourself, irrespective of age, and to help them through whatever it is that they're currently facing. This is why the word invisible is used, and used quite frequently in the world of chronic pain sufferers. Depression and anxiety in reason fall under this banner. Quite simply, the word invisible reflects just what those with or in pain appear to be coping with superficially, and is also a suitable and more less frowned upon word to identify those with depression and or anxiety, allowing others to recognize and respond to help them. But how? Now, it's a very, again, important point there about that invisible banner. And it goes back to, not being able to identify if someone is hurting internally because they don't have a flag above their head saying, I've got this, or this is on my mind, or I'm struggling to cope with this, or I don't know how to deal with this, etc. And that's okay, but I think the key premise here is to acknowledge that a lot of, mental health issues and challenges are invisible. They are not apparent, and it means when you're walking down the street, there's a really good chance the person next to you that they're dealing with something and you'd be none the wiser. It means your next door neighbour, they're dealing with something and there's a good chance you're none the wiser. You could be, but you might not be, and that's okay. But it's changing the dialogue in that respect, or the conversation, to go, I don't know, but maybe I could ask, and maybe I could be that person to listen to be more understanding. And you know what? The win for me also is that I'm going to learn something that's going to help me deal with the next person. And that next person could be your partner, they could be your child, they could be your friend. But it's opening up the mind and the connotations around mental health to reframe what it really means. And at the end of the day, it comes back to the player and athlete and having the tools to help them navigate their current challenges. The difference here is that by educating those around us, particularly coaches, on the term invisibleness, there are signs you can look out for. However, unless you are aware and looking, your player and or athlete will most likely appear fine on the outside, just like the rest of your players or athletes. By being aware of the invisibleness of depression and or anxiety puts coaches ahead of the game. They are in a more ready and able state to support their players and or athletes simply by looking out for them and their willingness to be present and to help these players or athletes by listening. And that's a big one. And we're also going to finish up on this one, even though it sounds it's so simple on one hand, but it's so entrenched on the other. And by that I mean listening is such a simple skill, right? It's just open our ears, be present, we're going to listen. But it's so entrenched and so much more, because it's what is the person in front of you really telling you? Because 9 times out of 10, they're not directly telling you what it is. it's the underlying message. And that's where we can get very caught up, or it can get very complex, and it's about unwrapping what's really there and where it's coming from, and really knuckling down to where we can really help them. And it comes back also to if we've experienced something in this way, shape or form that we can relate to the player or athlete or child with, though it's also integral to listen for, I guess, that change in dialogue and being able to open yourself up to be in that place. And it's a very rare skill, but I'm a big believer that it's something that we can all learn to be more present and aware and conscious of the person in front of us. And then even that's off the court. So when we are on the court, it's also about recognizing that we are all individuals and we are all human, and we all deserve that humanized approach, and being taught that when you are on the court, field, pool, etc., it is a safe space. And if there's something there, come and talk to me, or let's sit down and problem solve and figure this out together. And I think that's a very good point to finish today on, is about figuring it out together. Thank you so much for listening today. I've had fun, but it's also a topic that it's just so important, and I really hope that you've been able to take something out of there. For more, or to get a copy of The Secrets to Optimal Performance Success, please head over to AM8 International. That's am8international.com. Links are going to be in the bio. And that's also for any comments or questions. Please head over there, send them to me. And I would love to include them in future episodes. For something different, head on over to Pink Octopus Books. That's pinkoctopusbooks.com. That's actually where my fictional book that I've written is there, and that's essentially for the parents out there. It's a bit of fun, and I'd love your feedback there as well. If you'd like to get in contact with me directly via social, head on to Topic Thread. That's topicthread.com. It's the only social network that I'm on. Again, the links are in the bio. But before you go, please give us a thumbs up. Follow us, rate us. Hopefully you're enjoying it, and we deserve that 5 stars. That would be phenomenal. But anything of that, like, irrespective of where you're listening, would be amazing, because it allows other listeners that have an interest in this, or if they're looking at being a top 10 tennis player, it would be incredible one day to say, you know what, I was listening to Beyond Top 10 Tennis, and so were you, and look at us now. We're both inside the top 20, veering towards the top 10. Now, I cannot think of anything more incredible than that. All right, then, we're going to wrap today up. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge, and thank you so much for listening to Beyond Top 10 Tennis, and I'll see you next time.